Thank you for joining World to Come Ministries as we look at Bible studies, Bible readings, and worshiping God together as we look forward to the world to come.
Thank you for joining us on today's Bible study. This is going to be a four-part Bible study on Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 32. And I have labeled this series called A Prayer of Faith. So we're going to look into what those verses are and kind of what we can take out of them. So let's start with Matthew chapter 14, verse 22 through 32. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up unto the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. And the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spoke unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. When Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore dost thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. So today, we're going to take a little bit of look at the passage, and then we're going to kind of get this into a little bit of Peter. So this passage has three different, I'm going to call them three different lights in it. But we're going to take a look at the prayer of Peter. But one of those lights is the miracle of Jesus walking on the water. We are saved by the one who has all power. There is absolutely nothing that he can't do or that he can't handle. I could spend maybe a series just on that alone of Jesus walking on the water. But we're not going to look at that today. Another thought or another light in this passage is of Peter's failure. Peter walked on the water with Jesus, but because of the boisterous seas and his fear, he took his eyes off Jesus and he was drowning. We can learn a lot from Peter's mistake in our walk with the Lord. Because there is times that we're walking with the Lord and we are just like Peter. We let the boisterous sea of life, we let other things come up and take us away from that contact, from that faith that we have with Jesus. and we sink just like Peter did. But today and for this series, we're going to take a look at the prayer that Peter prayed and the prayer of faith. So, he prayed in verse 30, just a simple, short little prayer, Lord, save me. That is a prayer of faith. Prayers of faith are heard of the Lord. Peter needed Jesus' touch to reach down and save him. And he cried out unto him. Jesus heard and answered his prayer. So I want to look at the characteristics of Peter's I want to take a look at the characteristics of Peter's encounter in the storm as we consider a prayer of faith. So I want to consider these four things when we look at our message of prayer of faith. You have the peril that Peter faced. You have the progress that he made. You have the prayer that he prayed. And you also have the power that he received. So let's look at the peril Peter faced in verse 24. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So bear in mind that the disciples had followed the direction of Jesus. They were doing what Jesus said, to get into the ship and to go to the other side of the sea. While being obedient to Christ's command, they found themselves in a perilous situation. I mean, when Jesus tells you to do things, it's not going to always be a bed of roses and an easy time doing it. And this is no different with them. So let's look at a couple things about what they faced. One of the things is the intensity of the storm. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So as they sailed, the wind picked up and the ship began to toss about in the sea. The word tossed has the idea of vexing, harassing, and even causing pain. The waves created a volatile situation for the disciples. Also, we discovered that the wind was contrary. This has the idea of adverse, hostile, and opposing. So, while in the midst of the sea, the elements were working against them. What started out as a peaceful trip suddenly became a fight for their lives. So we have to consider that, we all have to consider bad days. But often these are nothing more than a changed schedule or a minor inconvenience. However, there are times in our lives when we are faced with the contrary wind and our vessel becomes tossed about by the winds of adversity. Sooner or later, we too will find ourselves in the midst of an intense storm, where it literally seems as if we are fighting for our survival. It may be a situation that came up suddenly, even unexpected, but it creates extreme concern. So we have to be mindful that Jesus is there in the midst of that situation. Even though it's not easy to have the faith and believe that He is there to take care of us, it is our job to know that He is there and He will protect us in the midst of that storm. The other thing I kind of want to look at in this little passage is the isolation of the ship. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So, John reveals that they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, probably about 3 or 4 miles away from the land. So they were out, not very easy to just swim to shore and come home. They were in the middle. So they were in the midst of the sea and totally isolated. It had taken much effort and several hours of work to get where they are, and the safety of the shore was nowhere in sight. The Lord was not with them, and they were forced to deal with the storm that they faced. So, surely at some point we have been in that situation. The storm arose unexpectedly, and we feel completely isolated in our situation, forced to face the storm seemingly all alone. And we're not. We're not alone. Jesus is there. We may feel like He's not. We may not reach out to Him. We may not have the faith to embrace Him, but Jesus is there. So this brings us to the end of part 1. Please join us for part 2. But let's just keep in mind that although it seems like we're in the middle of this storm alone, and it doesn't look like we have any hope, there is Jesus.
Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video, and join us next time as we worship God together. In the meantime, keep looking forward to the world to come.